for good reasons, gave a conditional order, which is that INEC should swear in the second candidate with the highest number of votes and the required constitutional spread. I believe the fact that the Supreme Court insisted on constitutional spread is in recognition of the fact that the Constitution does not want a situation in which anyone, governor or president, preside over the affairs of a state without at least a joint two-third support of the electorate of that state. Clearly, the votes scored by PDP and their candidate in that election was only made the requirement in 5 local governments. And you need 6 local governments to meet the requirement of two-thirds. The PDP candidate did not satisfy this requirement. Now, INEC had now chosen to appropriate the powers of the court, to appropriate judicial powers, to interpret laws that is neither competent to do, nor does it have the mandate so to do. Rather than allow the court, if there is conflicting interpretation, to clarify the issues, INEC sought to appropriate judicial powers and choose to proceed without any express order from the Supreme Court to purport to have cancelled or voided or waste the vote casted in favor of APC in order to be able to have a dubious spread in favor of PDP. INEC failed to recognize that its responsibility does not include its legal interpretation. And the Supreme Court did not ask INEC to go and begin to assume judicial powers. All it had regard to do was to do a simple arithmetic. Who has the next highest vote? Does such person has the required spread? If the answer is no, INEC can do no more. Now, INEC has decided to now assume that the case of Bayelsa is exactly the same case as that of Zamfara. Now, in so doing, INEC has assumed judicial powers. Yet, even elementary student, 100-level law student knows that the issue in Zamfara is quite different from that of Bayelsa State. In Zamfara State, the Supreme Court held that APC did not conduct primaries. And since we didn't conduct primaries according to the Supreme Court, we could not have half candidates, because primaries are a requirement under the law, under the Electoral Act, and also under our party constitution. In the case of Bayelsa, the Supreme Court recognized that primaries have been conducted. It upheld those primaries as valid. However, it had issues with the qualification of the running mate of our candidate. This case is exactly the same as was the case with Adamu Muazu in 1999 in Bauchi State, when the court found that after the election, the deputy governor to Adamu Muazu had issues with his qualifications. The Supreme Court, having accordingly nullified the candidature of or disqualified the running mate, proceeded to nullify the election and order for fresh elections to be conducted by INEC within 90 days. And in the process, the PDP candidate, then Adamu Muazu, was allowed to nominate another candidate as a running mate. This is exactly the same case as we have in Bayelsa. But unfortunately, INEC has chosen to adopt Zamfara. I wrote to INEC after the deliberation by NWC and after the necessary legal opinion, that if it was the intention of the Supreme Court to nullify or to declare the vote casted in favor of APC as wasted, the Supreme Court should have said so. INEC cannot import into the judgment nor delete anything from the judgment. Its responsibility is to comply in full, not to seek or try to assume what the implications of the judgment is. When party, we have consulted and we have resolved that we do not accept and we reject in total the decision of INEC to illegally declare the PDP candidate as the winner of the election and purported to waste the votes casted in favor of David Lyon. We, of course, recognize that having now purported to have issued certificate to PDP, we still believe that there are viable legal windows that we will exploit. We still affirm our confidence in the judiciary, even with the pains in our heart, because we recognize that in a democracy, you just must have a judiciary that may give judgment that sometimes you are happy with, and some other times you are not too happy. But we must live with it, particularly when it comes from the Supreme Court. But what we quarrel with today is not the judgment of the Supreme Court. What we don't agree is the attempt by INEC to constitute itself into a court and appropriate judicial powers which the Constitution of Nigeria never vested in INEC. So, we want to put the people of Nigerians on notice, and in particular our people in Bayelsa, that while we will maintain the peace, because we have responsibility for law and order, we will, however, sustain the legal processes to ensure that nobody hide under judicial cover to impose minority rule in Bayelsa State. Democracy is a game of numbers. It could not have been the intention of the Supreme Court that a man who didn't have the spread be sworn in as a governor. That was why the Supreme Court expressly made that conditional provision. INEC has chosen now to declare somebody who did not meet that requirement. So even INEC is in contempt of the decisions of the Supreme Court. We will, along with others, exploit every peaceful legal means to overturn this illegal imposition by INEC and attempt to weaken and even destroy the fabric of our democracy, which is about minority will have their say, majority will have their way. A situation where you now impose the will of the minority or the majority can't stand, whether on the basis of democratic logic or on the basis of the express provisions in the appropriate sections of the Nigeria Constitution, which gave birth to INEC, and under which we have a judicial system, a legislature, and executive. So briefly put, we are going to court and we will seek legal redress. We ask the people of Bayelsa to maintain the peace. We believe that it is not over. As they say, you do not start to laugh at the crocodile until you are sure you have crossed all the rivers. They have only crossed one river. There are several rivers ahead. They may turn out that they started laughing at the crocodile too early. And we submit to the process. We have confidence in the system. Thank you very much.